recording.
Yes, hi. This is Group A4. So our project is about organ donation and organ recipient process. Here are the group members that we have. We have Annabelle, Kylie, Lillian, and myself, Rochelle. So for the ethical dilemma overview, now let's dive in into an ethical dilemma surrounding organs donation and to the recipient process. Organ donation is a life-saving process where viable organs from donors are transferred to the recipient in critical needs. However, this process presents several ethical challenges. One of the biggest concern is the allocation of organs given the limited supply. Additionally, issues surrounding informed consent, defining brain death, ensuring the ethical decision making the complicate the process. As we navigate these challenges, we must balance the ethical principles such as autonomy, beneficence, non-maleficence, and justice. So now for the pros of organ donation and the recipient process are. For the pros, it's going to be it saves lives by giving patients suffering from end stage of organ failure and second chance. Second one, it advances the medical science, improving the transplantation techniques and success rates. It also provides a lasting legacy for donors, offering families a sense of meaning after loved ones passing. For the cons, fair allocation concerns the limited supply of an organ sparks debate about who should receive priority. Consent's an issue. In some cases, families override donors' wishes, or living donors may feel pressured to donate. Organ trafficking and exploitations are the black market raises a serious ethical violation and concern about unfair access. Our group of stands, as a team, we support ethical organ donation and fair recipient allocation. However, we are strongly advocate for greater transparency in the decision-making process, stricter regulation to prevent exploitation, equitable access so that all of the patients have a fair of chances to receive life-saving transplant. Ultimately, ethical guidelines must guide this critical decision to ensure the fairness of integrity and the best outcome for the patients in need.
Okay. All right, so the process, there's types of organ donation. So deceased donation, organs are retrieved from brain dead or cardiac deceased donors, or living donation, a healthy person donates an organ or a tissue. So examples of that are kidney, liver, and depending on like the severity of the situation. And so organ allocation process is managed by United Network of Organ Sharing, so also known as UNOS in the US. Matching criteria is based on medical urgency, blood type, tissue compatibility, and wait time. Challenges, ethical concerns over fairness and prioritization, and then also religious beliefs as well. Consent systems is explicit consent. Individuals must register as donors. Some have it on their driver's license or on their medical history form, and then presumed consent, everyone is a donor unless they opt out. So some legal and ethical considerations is the National Organ Transplant Act that prohibits organ sales, so also known as the black market, and then ethical concerns about coercion and living donation, and then debate over financial incentives to encourage donation. And so just to go into more depth, organ donation occurs through two primary pathways. So obviously deceased donation, where organs are retrieved from individuals who are brain dead or have suffered cardiac death. Living donation, where a healthy donor voluntarily donates an organ or a tissue. And then deceased donation follows strict legal and medical protocols to ensure viability and ethical procurement. Once an organ is available, it goes through an allocation process by UNOS in the US. The system prioritizes patients based on criteria such as medical urgency, compatibility, and time spent on the wait list. However, ethical concerns arise regarding disparities in access. Some worry that wealth, status, or location might influence allocation. The National academies of science, engineering, and medicine. They highlight that existing policies aim to ensure fairness, but gaps remain, particularly in addressing organ shortages and ensuring equal opportunity for all patients. The consent process varies by country. So the US uses an opt-in system, meaning individuals must proactively register as donors. In contrast, some countries like Spain use an opt-out, where everyone is automatically a donor unless they state otherwise. While this increases donation rates, it also raises ethical concerns about autonomy and informed consent. So there can be gray areas depending on the situation. And so finally, legal frameworks such as National Organ Transplant Act prohibits the sale of organs to prevent exploitation. So a lot of that from I know specifically happens in Asia countries, which I found very interesting. So, though debates continue over whether financial incentives would ethically increase donation rates, these policies shape how organ donation operates while ensuring donor rights and recipient fairness. And so let's talk about some pros. So we've got save lives, improves quality of life, medical advancements, provides meaning to families, and then ethical responsibility and reduces organ shortage. So as you can see here listed, we've got one donor can save up to 8 lives. It improves the quality of life, medical advancements, ethical responsibility, provides meaning to families, and reduces organ shortage. So to kind of dive into each one of these pros, so organ donation is a life-saving medical advancement that significantly enhances survival rates and quality of life for recipients. A single donor can save up to 8 lives by donating vital organs such as heart, lungs, liver, and kidneys, pancreas, and intestines. Beyond survival, transplantation restores independence, allowing individuals to return to their daily activities they otherwise couldn't possibly do because of their situation of organ failure. So organ donation also plays a crucial role in advancing medical science as well. So researchers continuously refine transplantation techniques, improving the long-term success of organ transplants. Programs like the Gift of Life Donor Program in Philadelphia have demonstrated effective strategies to increase donation rates, ensuring more organs are available for those in need. This model emphasizes community engagement, public education, hospital-based interventions to enhance organ procurement and ultimately save more lives. Additionally, a donation offers comfort to grieving families, knowing that their loved ones' organs are giving others a second chance at life, which can bring meaning to their loss. So, from an ethical standpoint, organ donation aligns with the principle of beneficence, which prioritizes actions that promote well-being and prevent harm. So encouraging organ donation helps address the critical shortage of available organs, reducing waitlist times and ensuring that more people receive life-saving transplants. But now let's talk about the cons. So you've got allocation iniquities, religious and cultural concerns, moral issues in living donation, risk of organ trafficking, and then medical risk for donors. So here are some cons. So ethical concerns over disparities in organ distribution. Some religious groups oppose organ donation, potential coercion or emotional pressure on family members, black market sales and exploitation of vulnerable populations, and then surgical complications and long-term health consequences. So to go into more into an elaborated effect on cons, so despite its life-saving potential, organ donation raises several ethical and logistic concerns. One major issue is allocation fairness. So the process aims to be objective, but factors like wealth, insurance coverage, and geographic location can sometimes affect access to transplantation. These disparities create ethical concern about justice in healthcare. Most healthcare, the ethics of organ allocation continue to be debated, particularly regarding how to balance medical urgency with fairness, ensuring that organs go to those who need them most rather than those with better access to healthcare resources. Religious and cultural beliefs also have an impact. Some faiths, such as certain interpretations of Islam or Judaism have restrictions on removing organs from deceased individuals. This can limit donation rates in specific communities. For living donors, there is also the risk of coercion. Family members may feel pressure to donate, even if they have personal reservations. This raises ethical concerns about autonomy and informed consent. Additionally, while medical advancements have improved transplant safety, living donors still face surgical risks such as infections, bleeding, and long-term complications. So they could potentially reject the organ that they just had transplanted. That's an example. So another major ethical concern is organ trafficking. Due to the shortage of available organs, illegal markets have emerged, particularly in developing countries, where desperate individuals may be coerced into selling their organs for financial gain. This exploitation of vulnerable populations further complicates the ethics of organ donation and transplantation. So, where our group stands is that based off of the pros and cons, though there are cons to consider, I think as a group, we can all agree that we are for organ donation because it emphasizes the need for strong ethical safeguards to ensure fairness, respect for patient autonomy, and equitable access for all individuals. So while organ donation is a life-saving practice, it must be managed responsible to prevent ethical dilemmas related to coercion, allocation disparities, and potential exploitation. We believe that ethical safeguards are key to ensuring the organ donation process so it remains just and effective. This includes maintaining transparent allocation system, prioritizing informed consent, and developing public education campaigns to encourage donor registration without coercion. Further, as future nurses, we recognize our professional duty to advocate for ethical healthcare policies that align with beneficence and justice and autonomy. So nurses play a crucial role in educating patients, supporting families, and ensuring ethical medical practices.
Okay. So some decisions that should be made and then like carefully just considered. Sorry, excuse me. For organ donation specifically, I think Lillian hit on it earlier. There's an opt-in system. There's also an opt-out system, which I did not include on my slide, just due to the sole fact that it's usually not displayed here in the US. But the opt-in system requires individuals to actively register as donors. So that's something they do like that is usually put on like their driver's license, medical records, stuff like that. And then also two different kinds of organ donors, living and deceased organ donors. Living donors must assess long-term health risks, psychological effects, and financial burdens before they attempt to donate. Deceased donors depend on prior registration, so again, that opt-in system, or family consent, which makes early planning definitely an important part. Ethical and religious beliefs for donors include struggle with concerns about bodily autonomy and just different aspects of the donation process. And then family discussions usually help align donation choices with personal and cultural values for either the living or the deceased. And then for the organ recipients, a few different decisions and factors to consider here too. The first one is medical eligibility and risk assessment. Factors can include organ compatibility, urgency, and rejection risk. Those are also things that UNOS kind of looks over and manages. And then also financial considerations. So recipients have to plan for the cost of surgery, the post-operative care, and then just lifelong therapy too, in terms of like rejection or if it does go well, but there is still some issues going on. And then emotional and ethical considerations. Some patients may experience survivor's guilt or like in other terms, oh my gosh, I don't have it down, but especially when receiving an organ from a deceased donor, almost like imposter syndrome is what I was trying to think of. But some ethical concerns can include the fairness of organ allocation based on medical urgency versus socioeconomical factors. And then some ethical reasonings behind being a donor or recipient. There's a few different things, individual rights, the overall benefit, justice and fairness, and then a moral obligation. So the first one for donors, utilitarianism, also maximizing overall benefit. For donors, encourages organ donation because it saves lives and improves overall well-being of other people. And then in terms for the recipient, it justifies organ allocation based on maximizing survival chances and quality of life rather than first come, first served. Again, something that UNOS kind of manages. And then moral obligations. For donors, some people believe there is a moral duty to donate their organs to help people even after like death or before. And then for recipients, it raises questions about whether some people have a duty to refuse an organ if another person might benefit more. And then autonomy and informed consent, otherwise known as like the individual rights of a person. For the donor, a person should have the right to decide whether or not to donate. Again, that opt-in versus opt-out policy. And then recipients, the patient must give informed consent for transplantation, understanding the risks, long-term consequences, and then the post-transplant care. Again, that kind of also falls under like if there's like financial situations going on there too. And then lastly, justice and fairness, equal access and organ allocation. For donors, there's issues of organ trafficking, which is now limited but not impossible to happen. Exploitation of vulnerable populations, and then fairness in living donations. And then for recipients, it ensures organs are allocated based on medical urgency, compatibility, and the need rather than wealth, status, or personal connections.
Okay, so the code of ethics in organ donation and organ recipient process, first and foremost is respect for autonomy. It's important to make sure that the organ donation is informed and is voluntarily, not forced. Living donors should be aware of the risk and the benefits of donating. They have the right to give consent. Whereas deceased donors should have given consent before they passed away or given to the next of kin. Recipients should also be informed of consent and understand any potential risk. Beneficence and non-maleficence. The purpose of the organ translation is to improve the quality of life of the recipient. The code of ethics requires that we perform careful assessment to make sure that the entire process is completed without causing any harm to the recipient. Confidentiality and privacy. It's important that we ensure privacy for both the donor and the recipient. It must be confidential to protect the privacy of everyone involved, unless there's an agreement between the donor and the recipient to have contact with one another. Non-discrimination equity. This means that it's important that the recipients receive organs because of the medical need. It should not be based on socioeconomic status, ethnicity, race, or any other factors. The purpose of this is to ensure that recipients are not discriminated throughout the whole process. Next, we have family involvement and sensitivity. There are scenarios when an individual passes away and then they happen to be donors. We do have to respect the individual's family members' choices as well. It's a very challenging situation. Therefore, it's important to be compassionate and emphasize with the family. There are some cultures or religions that don't believe in organ donation, and then there are some that do. So it's important to respect these beliefs in these kind of situations, but also acknowledge the legality of things. Next, the Nurse Practice Act in organ donation and recipient process, informed consent and autonomy. Nurses are responsible for advocating for patient autonomy, ensure informed consent is obtained. We do have to advocate for our patient rights. Just we want to make sure that their well-being is important and prioritized at all times. The ethical considerations in donation, we have to emphasize the ethical principles of, again, do no harm, non-maleficence, benefits, do good, and justice, which means fairness. Next, we do have to monitor post-transplant care. Nurses monitor both the pre-transplant, transplant, and the post-transplant phases. They make sure that all patients receive the highest standards of care throughout the entire process. Collaboration and teamwork. It's really important and emphasizes the communication with other healthcare providers to ensure that the success of the organ donation and transplant process is great. Next. Why do we support organ donation, organ recipient process? In a peer review article called Transforming Organ Donation Transplantation Strategies for Increasing Donor Participation and System Efficiency, it was found that organ transplantation provides life-saving solutions for patients who are having end-stage organ failure. And this goes for like heart failure, like liver failure, things like that. According to WHO, thousands of patients around the world are waiting for hearts, lungs, livers, and kidneys. In the US alone, there's 100,000 people waiting for a transplant, and about 17 people die each day waiting for a transplant. As Lillian mentioned earlier, one registered donor can save up to 8 lives through an organ donation and improve up to 75 lives through tissue donation. In conclusion, we did went over the following. Organ donation is a life-saving medical procedure that offers individuals the opportunity for a second chance at life through transplantation. We discussed the ethical dilemma of organ donation and organ recipient process. It's the decision-making process. It must balance ethical principles such as autonomy, benefits, non-maleficence, and justice. Of course, there are both pros and cons of the organ donation and organ recipient process. As a group, we do support organ donation and transplantation with ethical safeguards to ensure fairness, respect for autonomy, and equitable access. Our group stance is based on critical reasoning and ethical decision making. Our group stance is supported by the Code of Ethics, the Nurse Practice Act, and by peer-reviewed sources. Any questions?
I don't think we have any questions. Okay, and then
Our presentation.
our references and our resources of everything, and then that is our group project. Thank you guys.
Yeah, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead and stop. Oh wait, okay, hold on. How do I stop recording?